it's just amazing that how God started setting up those events. I was beginning to realize for the first time the impact that it did have on me. And I didn't, like I said, I hadn't told anybody, and I had to reveal it to my family first, my husband. And it was his baby. He had no clue, thought it was a miscarriage. And then I revealed it to my children. And through speaking it out, giving my testimony in front of thousands of people at the First Baptist Church in Leesburg, it actually, I began to heal. Because it wasn't a secret anymore. I was not convicted anymore of the shame and the guilt. I'm always going to miss him. That part I know is never going to go away. But I'm not condemned. I'm not condemning myself anymore, and I'm released from that guilt, shame. And that's the importance of going through post-abortion counseling. I'm leading post-abortion counseling now at the Pregnancy Care Center. I've done 2 classes. One was for me and another girl, and then I went through another whole class, and I went to a conference and got a whole new curriculum that I'm going to be starting. There's 43% of women who have had abortions. That means that 43% of you that are in here either know somebody, you might know someone who's had an abortion, or you yourself may have, or you might know, or you're going to know somebody. But if that's true, then if it did what it did to me, and I've studied abortion so much now, and I'm just amazed at how uninformed that I was. So it's so important to make sure you go through some kind of post-abortion counseling. And I'm trying to incorporate a class where it's not going to be, it's not that easy to just walk up and say, oh, okay, can we start a Bible study at the church for post-abortion? I know that that's not easy. So I'm trying to incorporate a class, my next class. If you're interested in that, you can contact me confidentially and go through that with me. It's not going to be here. It's away from the church. So I just want to encourage you that we need your prayers. We're on the front lines, and I have recognized that this is life and death. And if we mostly need your prayers, it's just, I have more compassion for now because of what I went through. So I just want to encourage you, if you are going through not just necessarily abortion, but if there's things in your past that you have withheld. So I'm not saying go blab all your stuff to people. I do. To people. You don't have to do what I do to everybody, but there is something that happens whenever we uncover our sin and let God cover it. He does something that is just supernatural. It's out of this world, and it's freeing. And whatever you've been through, or whatever you are thinking that you can't tell somebody, if you earnestly pray and ask God, is this really going to help somebody? He will give you somebody that has been through that, and they need to hear that you've been through it too, and that they're not alone. So I just want to thank you for letting me speak today, but just continue to pray for all of the girls, all the pregnancy care centers, everybody who's around you. Just ask for prayer. Prayer. That's what's going to help the most. I want to mention that my baby, I named him. We went through post-abortion counseling. When I went through post-abortion counseling, there was a part, I had already named my baby Daniel, and I said earlier, it's probably because I love Pastor Daniel, but I named him Daniel, and then later remembered that his name means that God will be my judge. But there was a part that in our post-abortion counseling class, that you're supposed to set aside a time for 6 days in a row, actually, and ask the sex of your baby, and ask God what the sex of your baby was, and give him a name to identify him as a person. Well, I had already done that part, but I was obedient in the class, and I went. It only took me one time. I sat down in my bathroom, at home, and I sat down and said, God, I know that I named him Daniel, but you had him before I did, and before I even acknowledged him as a person, so I know that you named him. So what did you name him? And immediately, it's not like this big old voice came down from heaven, but immediately in my spirit I heard the name Issachar. And I didn't never hear that name before, and it was kind of like, it didn't come out that way, it was just like Issachar or something. I don't remember exactly how I said it, but it was weird, and I thought I had a new language in my tongues. Like, I'm speaking in tongues, and it's a little bit of new language to put with it, but that wasn't it. I thought it was pretty silly, but I went and got my concordance out, a big, huge concordance, and I looked up the name. I started the way that I thought that it sounded, and there was definitely an Issachar in the Bible, and you can study that later, but his name means that he will bring a reward. And at that time, I was still condemning myself. I closed the concordance, and I was like, okay, this is a bunch of crap. I'm just talking to myself. I said, this is a bunch of crap, and I said, God, if that's not true, I'm just crazy. I don't know, I'm just making up stuff. And I said, how can my baby bring a reward when I killed him? That's my thinking at that time. And I went about a week, and I met back with the girl at work the next week. One of the girls going through the class she was going through the class and was in a lot more bondage than I am and all other things. But she spoke to me. Listen to everybody. Ask God if it's God speaking, but listen to everybody. Be willing to listen. But she said, I wasn't even going to tell anybody what I did because I thought it was so silly. And she reminded me that, Rachael, your baby is bringing a reward because you're saving babies now. So it just like I immediately was okay, thank you, Jesus, I'm sorry for being hard-headed. But it just amazes me that he can work all things together for the good of those who love him. It doesn't matter what it is, where you've been, if you will uncover it, he will cover it. And you can, he works everything together. So I want to end, I didn't do this earlier, but I have copies of this. This is a poem that Aaliyah wrote about my little God baby, Jalea. And let me just read it to you, and I'll close with that, okay? It's dedicated to Jalea, and this is after she had the baby. So I've spent a lot of time with her through her pregnancy. We saw her through her pregnancy. She had her baby. She's a young mother. She's 18. She'll be turning 19, but she was only 17 when because she was at the end of being 17 when I first met her, but she has went from the extreme. She is feeling unworthy right now, like we all do sometimes, and she's not, because she's messed up a little bit, but I messed up a lot before I really got better. So that's why I want to pray for her, but this is from her heart, and I'm going to read it to you. It's dedicated to the baby, Jalea. I try to turn my head from the images I see, situations all too familiar to me. The aching life of the streets, sex, weed, alcohol, and drug money is what makes the streets. Survival at its low is what it is to me, snatching any lost soul that stumbles. And at one point, that soul was me. You ask how, why? Sometimes life gives you obstacles that you just can't beat. But at the time, I couldn't see. I was 17 and independence was clawing at me. That's when I became that lost soul who the streets drowned beneath its concrete. Indulging in the things that seemed important in the streets, from weed to ecstasy, it all relaxed my mind and set my thoughts free. While at the same time, unknowingly, I was being chained, slaved to a substance so much bigger than me. Not getting love for where I needed it most, so I had to go find it, and it happened to be from a dude who sold dope. I can relate to that. Drugs, love, and attention. I was 18 and I was falling fast, never taking a step, but always seeming to fall too back. But all of a sudden, something kicked from inside of me. A movement in my stomach that revitalized me. A baby in my stomach who opened up my eyes for me to see. The streets were never a place for me to be. So as I continue to pass by those same streets that once captured every single portion of me, I can now break my stare from the streets and look down to what's important to me. I rub my bulging belly and whisper to her, thank you, Jalea, for saving me.